George R.R. Martin, the busiest non-writer in the world, has apparently been consulting with FromSoft, the company who brings you Dark Souls and other titles, of course, on a game where he and their writers have been collaborating to create a world for FromSoft to make a game in, which, honestly, sounds pretty dope to me.
You want to know what I think of that? Now, FromSoft, Dark Souls, right?
Yes, Dank Souls.
Dank Souls. There's two problems, all right? Or not problems, but concerns. Okay?
Is George R.R. Martin's blood pressure one of them?
Okay, 3 concerns. George R.R. Martin's blood pressure is definitely one of them. My first major concern is, can Dark Souls actually make a story game? Because they haven't shown the ability to do it.
Well, it doesn't mean that's Dark Souls. It could be a totally different thing.
There's no way. It's definitely gonna be a Dark Souls-like game. There's no fucking way.
It'll be Dark Souls-like.
Yes.
So you're talking with the genre.
The genre of Dark Souls.
All right,
sorry.
Now
I don't mean Dark Souls.
Oh, okay, because that's what. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean the genre. I mean, they've been making these games. We know what.
You know what you're getting.
Yeah, we call it a Dark Souls-like game, right?
Yeah, now I get you. Okay.
So they haven't shown the ability to tell a great story. Now, just because George R.R. Martin is a great storyteller doesn't mean that I have any confidence in the fact that they can actually portray the story, because what they're good at creating bosses.
They're good at world building.
World building. They're making the game difficult and making it look nice in the process. They haven't shown the ability to make a cohesive, to make even the story something people care about. And it's not because the writing's bad. It's just that they're so ultra-focused. It's like John Wick, right? John Wick has shown that they can tell good stories in number 2. Mm-hmm. But number 3, they just gave us what they're really good at, and that's the fighting and combat and all that shit. Dark Souls has only ever shown us that they're good at the fighting and combat and shit. What's going to happen if they try and make a story and make it intertwine with what they're good at? Mm-hmm. Will it take a hit on what they're good at? Will the story even be portrayed in a good way, even though they got a good writer? The other thing is, my other concern is, and this is an even bigger concern, is I feel like right now, hiring George R.R. Martin is nothing but a publicity play.
To be fair, apparently this is like a couple years back.
It doesn't matter.
But mentioning it is obviously publicity.
It's buy this game because George R.R. Martin is an amazing storyteller, creator of Game of Thrones.
Well, not that they need a lot of help to sell games, because everything they put out sells a shitload of copies.
Exactly, but I mean, I feel like I'm not saying you don't hire him, but I feel like it's nothing more than a tactic, and I'm not sure his storytelling is going to make the games any better. Right? That's what I'm looking at. I would just prefer, honestly, keep making your shitty storytelling games. I'm sorry for the ones out there. It's like, well, you just didn't dig, and you just didn't read.
Well, there's the balance between there is a good story and good characters and good world building. It just isn't told in a way that is easily digestible by 90% of the people that play it.
More than 90.
Then there's like the small percentage that will go and read every item description and play.
That's not good
dots.
storytelling. That's not good storytelling. It's just not. I'm not saying that the story isn't.
Well, it's actually just not storytelling.
It's just not storytelling. Exactly. It's just
it's breadcrumb leaving.
Let's be real.
Yeah.
The game is about fighting bosses. That's what the game is, right? It's kind of like Godzilla that just came out. People were like, oh, the humans are shitty, the story's shitty, but the monsters are fucking incredible. Well, that's what we're there for. We want to just see incredible monster fights. Just like Dark Souls. Stop trying to be something you're not. Just create harder games. Make the bosses harder. Go and hire Del Toro to create really cool bosses. And that'll get me more excited than George R.R. Martin sprinkling story that you're gonna fucking put to the side unless they're completely changing the way they do things. And if that's the case, then that'll get me intrigued.
Yeah.
But I don't see it happening like that. I think they're just going to use it for another tactic to sell more games.
Yeah, I'm still interested in it because if Martin's involved, Martin is at least marginally picky about how whatever he's involved in, if he's going to write something, how it's delivered.
Yes.
Otherwise, why the fuck?
But
he's
not a
doing
video game guy, so how is he going to know what what is delivered properly or not. You know,
Well, I don't think there's a hell of a lot of difference between a movie and a video game in terms of how something is delivered at the end of the day.
Well, I mean, I can make the argument
Because most of it's cutscenes.
Well, yes, but at the same time, we've seen a lot of video game to movie adaptations that are they're just not translated correctly. It's just not. You take a George R.R. Martin thing that is meant for.
Well, I actually think it's easier to tell a story in a game than a movie because you have more time.
I don't. Personally, I think there's a much more bigger gap in between what's happening. I mean, it depends on the game. I mean, if you're looking at something like The Last of Us, that's a story driven game. It's a even with the clicking of the buttons like click X now and triangle, you're literally quick time events. Dark Souls is not that. So a Dark Souls like game is not.
Well, Dark Souls in general is not what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
I mean, Dark Souls is a video game.
Yeah,
but the difference between let's say a television series, which is usually better than a movie because you have more time.
You just have more time.
And then in games is similar. The difference is that instead of watching a short clip of an action scene or something like that, that's like the main characters. It's like Lord of the Rings. The main characters going from point A to point B.
Yeah.
You know that the major plot points are likely to happen at point A, point B, and then there are elements between point A and point B that are, moments that they have to overcome some sort of, hurdles in their way. In gaming, that all you're getting there, the hurdles are enemies,
yes,
puzzles, things of that nature that usually are part of the world that build out the world that enforce whatever happens at point B.
Yes.
So with Dark Souls, though, the way that they've delivered story is largely through how the world looks. So it's kind of passive storytelling. And then through the item descriptions and whatnot, and then sitting there and theory crafting and connecting all the dots between everything that you possibly could, and coming up with some semblance of a thread of the story in the game. But like you said, the majority of people aren't necessarily playing it for that. They might like the aesthetic of the game, the designs
bosses,
and stuff.
It's the difficulty of it.
And then the difficulty attracts a lot of people because they like to be able to
challenge
themselves or say that they got through it. But if Martin gets involved, I have to assume a couple of things. One, I would be, unless Martin is just doing the world building aspect of it, which I don't feel like FromSoft really needs all that much help with. So unless they're just interested in a George R.R. Martin take on what that would do, that they could put their game in, I feel like we might be getting something that isn't necessarily a traditional Souls-like game. I'm sure that it's going to be combat-wise a similar experience, but if Martin is involved, I would suspect that we're going to get a little bit more direct storytelling in like a traditional game sense instead of the passive storytelling that Dark Souls
would
is
have
usually.
To be. But I also fear that if they do keep the Dark Souls-like vibe and make it really difficult, because the game is so difficult, getting to the next area for the continuous of the storytelling, whether that's through cutscene or through character development or whatever, it'll become progressively more harder to get to the next place, which means you're not getting a dose. You're getting a clump of storytelling, and then you're going potentially 8 hours of no storytelling at all, just grinding till you beat it, and then now you're getting another segment of storytelling, and now it's more grinding. So it's not as cohesive and not as impactful. And not only that, some people just don't even finish these games. They're just like, fuck this.
Of course.
This is just too fucking hard. So I think what I would love to see with George R.R. Martin is, for one, I just love to see him finish Game of Thrones, because all this other shit is
Well,
whatever.
he's already said that he's planning on that book being the
next one is
Winds
like
of Winter
next year,
or whatever is like next year.
Yeah. But what I would love to see if George R. was doing it is if Dark Souls is creating a game, said, here, George, this is our world. These are our characters. Consult us. What do you think? They give him the story. They give him this, and then he just adds a flair to it. He gives his ideas.
What's happening.
He gives his ideas. His this is a really cool character, but this is how I would do it.
Yeah.
This is this, and then they can have the option to either use what he's saying and implement that, or maybe he can add more to the world,
Yeah.
and then they can just continue to make what they do.
Yeah.
That's what I would like to see.
I think that's probably closer to what is actually happening. I think it is just a consultation. He doesn't have enough time to sit down and like actually hash out a game alongside of them.
No.
So consulting is almost certainly what's going on there.
But hey, I'm not mad at it. I'm not
No.
I'm not mad at it at all. But I just hope that what my biggest concern was, I hope that Dark Souls doesn't try and be something it's not. Because I like Dark Souls like games because of what they're like. And it would suck to see them change that unless this is a totally different, it's from the same company, but a totally different game. Right?
Well,
like a totally different
That's what it's probably what we're getting towards. So it'll be we right now it's only known as like if they have a project name, it's Project GR. And it's been in development for apparently 3 years. Now that does we don't know if that just means that they've been like writing or just setting up or actually developing actively for 3 years, but it's been 3 years. The project's been running for 3 years. It's an open world title, so and it includes horse riding for the open world. So that already tells you that the world itself is done a bit differently than a Souls-like game.
It's got to be bigger. Yeah. Maybe it's more like Shadow of a Colossus.
Collaboration between Miyazaki and Martin, published by Bandai Namco.
So since it says collaboration, it might be more of what I just said.
And that's what I mean is I think that and that makes sense because we know that Martin doesn't have all that much time, although he likes to spread it thin anyway. Apparently we're going to be getting an official announcement at E3 during the Microsoft conference.
Hey.
So we're going to get more in a couple weeks.
Cool.
We're going to see it all come together.
It's actually starting to sound like a pretty stacked E3. There's a lot, especially with the new consoles coming around.
Just not technically at E3.
I'm just going to keep calling it E3.
Oh, that's why, because it's happening the same week.
Same week.
So it's E3 week.
Yeah.